So you talk a lot about like self-acceptance and self-love and things like that. There's a lot in society and media, and we're not judging, we're just observing and commenting on sort of like radical self-acceptance and radical self-love, right? So there's been, ads with overweight people or people that are engaged in unhealthy behaviors. And some of the overarching messages are like, it's okay, that's you. You do you, whatever you're doing is cool, it's okay, and you should love yourself absolutely no matter what. So it's not a challenge to you necessarily, but I wonder how you deal with that, because you do preach self-love and you do teach self-love, but almost like earned self-love, like you've earned that and you've achieved that, and please correct me if I'm misrepresenting your position. But I guess my question would be, what do you make of those ads and that media and those magazines that are like, hey, whatever you bring to the table as is, you're good to go. Love yourself anyway. And if you do kind of encounter that, how do you deal with that? Do you shift mindset? Do you kind of go along with that self-love, or how do you deal with that issue with yourself or your clients?
It's an interesting subject right now. And I always come back to the pendulum, right? So absolutely, it can swing really far one way to self-love, no matter what you're doing, even if you're damaging your body or damaging your mindset, whatever it is. And then the other way as well too, where you're just, you are not friends with you, you are hating on you. So we always want to come into that middle part of the pendulum, right? So it's really easy to really jump wrong. Anytime you start one thing new, right, and you're really excited about it, it's all you talk about, and it consumes you. It's who you are. It's your full identity in that time. So jumping onto the self-love, self-acceptance, looking into the root, I'm very much from a holistic background. So what is the root of that? When you choose to have that destructive behavior, but you're still loving yourself through it, is that truly self-love? Now, it's working to become the person that supports you, right? So going back to the affirmations from earlier, I'll kind of come full circle on this. With the affirmations, I am disciplined. Well, if you're someone who's not disciplined, you're not bullshitting your brain, right? You're like, no, I'm not disciplined. I'm not at all. I'm trying to be. So changing that wording to I'm working to becoming someone who is disciplined, right? You're still doing the affirmation, but you're in line. You're being reasonable with who you are as a human being today, right? And then coming to as well with the, when you are, that's a good way to word this. What is the root of why you're doing that action? Are you drinking excessively because you love yourself or because you're numbing yourself? Are you eating foods that are not fueling your long-term health and not nutrient dense because you love yourself or because you've never learned otherwise of what it feels like to fully nourish your body, right? It is so easy to swing really far one way or the anything. And one of my words for this year is nuance, right? It's not as simple as just love yourself and whatever action you do it's the working through what parts of myself don't I love. Just because you have self-love doesn't mean you love every little bit about you. It's accepting that I have this part about me that I don't like. It's finding the root cause as to why you're doing that action. And then that comes into intentional living. The actions that you're taking every single day, what is your why behind them? And then when you come back to that base why of, I want to exercise because I want to feel energized. It's an intentional connection to the self-love.
I think that, and I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I know we didn't talk about beforehand that coming up, but it just, that term self-love can be used and misused, and acceptance, radical acceptance. It's such a nice thing to say. Like, you just accept people for whoever they are. Like, well, what if they're a murderer, right? What if they're an abuser? Like, do you accept that? Or is that something we need to look at, right? And I think you're on the right track there with that intentional living. Are you truly living intentionally? And if the answer is yes, like, no, I chose all this. This is all what I want. Then pushing to that deeper level of like, well, what does that satisfy? Why is that what you want? Where does that come from? Is that learned? And then to follow that up with that idea that you don't really know how good it could be because you've never lived in an intentional way and really thrived and felt super healthy. What's that phrase is like, feeling healthy, it tastes better than any ice cream or something like that. It's like one of those diet mantras, right?
Yeah. It'll never taste as good as skinny feels or whatever.
Yeah, that whole thing.
Yeah.
Right. But there's some truth to that, right? Because I think if you do get into a more optimal state of functioning emotionally, spiritually, physically, any of that, once you get a taste of that, you're sort of like, oh, this is what it means, you know? You probably have this a little bit in Canada, but in New England right now, the sun's starting to come out and the days are getting a little longer, and we joke about seasonal affective depression or disorder, and it's like, ha, ha, ha. It's like a little running joke until the first sunny day, and you feel that lift, and you're like, oh, man.
You get your personality back.
Yeah, you get your personality back, and it's like, oh, it's not so funny. It's not, it really is a big difference, right? And so if you could choose intentionally to live in that state or the hunkered down for the winter state, which one would you really choose if you had the choice? So...
Well, and I love even that you just put there, like the murderer, the abuser, that's an extreme example. But again, what's the root behind it? Why did that person become that way? Now, it doesn't make their action correct, but it stemmed from something. So even bringing it down to a much more micro level of a small habit that you're doing, you've learned how to do it that way for a reason. What's the why behind? Where did that come from?
Yeah, and it's constant swaps between what you really want versus what you want right now, right? Because if you showed a 10-year-old version of yourself, you today, just let you watch a video of you all day, would they love everything? Would they love how you're feeling, how you're looking, what you're doing, how you're living your life? I don't know that we grow up aspirationally and think, man, I really hope I get 4 hours of video games in every day, and I hope that I can just, be 50 pounds overweight, and I really hope I have an unsatisfying relationship. It'd be great if I was just dragging myself through a relationship. Like, so when did you give up on your best self? When did you give up on those dreams, And there's no judgment to any of that. Like, I play video games sometimes, and there's video game designers that go, look, I do it 12 hours a day. Great. Find your passion and go chase it. So I'm not after any specific behavior. I just think that we compromise and make deals with ourselves subconsciously over and over and over, and you end up in a place that you probably would have never chosen for yourself in the first place, And so kind of how did that happen?